I'm Margo, and my dad is a huge art nerd. Growing up in Illinois, he used to take me and my sisters to the Art Institute, which is home to one of my dad's favorite works of art, America Windows by Marc Chagall. Now that he and my middle sister have joined us in southern France, it's no question where we're going first. The Chagall Museum. There are several works of Chagall's art, including paintings, sketches, and even a large mosaic. His art often features Jewish iconography, which makes sense since he had to flee from an occupied France to the United States during World War II. He eventually returned to his home country, where he continued to make magnificent art influenced by his youth in Belarus, his time in New York City, and his years reconnecting with his Jewish heritage in France after the great devastation that affected those that were unable to flee. Though my favorite part of the exhibit is obvious. It's the blue windows. It felt like I was a little girl again, staring up at the stained glass while my dad taught me and my sisters about the history of Chagall's work, playing I Spy with the swaths of color. Something about the blue just feels like home. Sorry, got sentimental there. Anyway, on to Martigues. Hiya! I'm Margo, and welcome to Martigues. While Levi didn't visit here, it is central to a lot of the towns he did visit, so this will be our home base for the next few days. Plus, it's absolutely gorgeous, with a beautiful harbor and tons of small town charm. Also, oysters. It's hard not to be happy when you have oysters. Also, I just want to highlight how beautiful my mom is. Like, look at her. She needs to use this as her author headshot, please. Oh, right, I'm over 40 episodes in and I haven't even mentioned that. This trip was a big part of my mom's research for her book, Letters of a Traveling Architect. This book covers Levi's journey in detail through all of the countries he visits, from the largest strike in UK history, to an audience with the Pope, and a hilarious incident crossing from Algeria to Morocco. If you want to follow Levi's letters just like we've been over this series, you can get your copy of Letters of a Traveling Architect today by visiting my mom's website, KristenAlger.com. Hiya! I'm Margo, and we have a handful of photos to recreate today in Nimes, France. We're starting at the Amphitheater of Nimes, which was originally built by the Romans to host gladiator duels, wild animal hunts, and even public executions. Today it's a concert venue, which is a really stark contrast to this place's past. Gladly, this photo was pretty easy to recreate. After some family photos and my dad being an absolute goofball, we lined up our shot just perfectly. That's another Levi photo down. Hiya! I'm Margo, and today we're recreating 3 photos that my great-grandfather took 100 years ago. The first one is the Monument aux Morts de Nimes, which commemorates World War I, or as Levi would have called it, the Great War. Here it is 100 years ago, and here it is still today, largely unchanged. The next 2 are located within the Garden of Nimes, with the first being the staircase. Levi's photo was much more crowded than the one we were able to snap, and you'll notice that a new archway and wooden raised track have been constructed, though we weren't able to determine why. If anyone local happens to know what that's about, I'd love to learn. But for now, up the mountain we go to recreate our third photo, the Tour Magne. This is the last remaining tower of a once great wall that defended the town of Nimes. Now it offers a gorgeous view over the city. Despite being built around 15 BC, the tower hasn't experienced a lot of weathering between now and 100 years ago. It's really interesting to see what things change and how much really stays the same. Hiya! I'm Margo, and we are at Pont Du Gard, a Roman aqueduct that runs over the Gardon River. 100 years ago, Levi visited this place with Vince Ingalls and John Connell, 2 of his friends from Notre Dame University. While there, they take a ton of photos, which my family and I tried to recreate. Keyword, tried. Turns out this photo was taken from a hillside that no longer exists. So this is the closest we could get to recreating that shot. Then there is this photo taken from the topmost section of the aqueduct. My dad and I spent 30 minutes hiking through the narrow paths, half covered with briars, just to come across this. A chain-link fence blocking us off from where Levi once stood. But that's okay, we still have one more photo to recreate, and it's lower, so maybe we have a... Nope. No chance here either. Still blocked off. In my frustration, I wrote one of the shortest poems during my journey. Dear historians, how can I record a history blocked off for its preservation? Hiya, I'm Margo, and today we are at the cutest winery in the world. Welcome to Isle de Saint-Pierre, a small island just north of where the Rhone River flows into the Mediterranean Sea. Famous for the rosé, my family and I ended up going by for a wine tasting. I highly recommend going by this place. Even after this trip, we still find ways to get bottles of Isle Saint-Pierre rosé here in the States, and it is absolutely delicious. If you see the symbol of faith, hope, and love, you know that you've found home. Hiya! I'm Margo, and we are at Arles to recreate one of Levi's photographs and stop by the Van Gogh Museum. I'll talk more about the photo tomorrow, but for today, I wanted to share how surprised I was to see that the Van Gogh Museum only had one Van Gogh painting. Despite Arles being the town where many of the artist's most famous works were painted, most of them are either in Musée d'Orsay in Paris or other large art collections around the world. What is in this museum are Van Gogh-inspired artworks showing the impact his work made not just on the Impressionist movement, but on the future of art. I love this piece, where up close it's hard to understand the scene, but from a distance you start to see a city in fog. It is incredibly well done, and maybe one of my favorite paintings I've seen on this trip so far. Here are some of the few other pieces that stood out to me and my family members. When I can, I'm going to include the name of the artist above the artwork because I want to give them the credit they deserve, but with some of these, I didn't photograph the artist plaque next to the artwork, so I apologize for any that aren't credited. I swear I tried. Hiya, I'm Margo, and if you have sisters, you know that you don't always get along. When we were recreating this photo specifically, my eldest sister and I got into an argument about where we needed to stand to get the right angle. Petty? Yes, but I will concede that she did end up being correct about us needing to purchase tickets to get into the Roman ruins to take this photo. While she went out to recreate it, I needed to blow off some steam, so I sat on a nearby door stoop and wrote 3 poems to get my feelings out. 2 of them are more about anger in general, but this one was written directly to her. And before anyone asks, I actually considered removing these poems altogether from my Sincerely collection, but she actually said I should keep them in as a way to show how poetry can be a great way for processing emotions. So, without further ado, dear sister, I am capable, I promise. I am unskilled, I know. I am listless, I realize, but all that goes to show is despite my adulthood, just the fact that you're taller means you'll always talk down to me. Treat me as smaller. My sister, dear sister, who I swear I love, I am capable, I promise, I am capable of... Off you go. To take the shot you don't trust me to take. Maybe I could take better shots if you'd let me try. Hiya! I'm Margo, and if you're an art nerd like me, you may recognize this painting by Van Gogh. Well, while walking around Arles, I happened to look up at just the right time and stop my family in their tracks. Y'all, it's the painting! It's Cafe La Nuit! This is so cool! My middle sister is obsessed with Van Gogh. That's why we went to the Van Gogh Museum in the first place. Seeing just how in love she was with the place inspired me, so I ended up writing a song about her. Since I've gotten comments in the past from people saying they love my guitar playing in the back of these videos, I'm gonna do something a little special for tomorrow's episode. Stay tuned. Of Musée d'Orsay, the best of all them I say, is the Impressionists. The artwork forms quite the maze, but she found him through the haze. Level 5, room 36. And what would you know, but there is Van Gogh staring back at me, staring back at her. And what would you know, but
There's my Van Gogh girl, lost in wonder. She stares at blue irises while I stare at brown irises. Boy, the bouquets can't quite portray her glow. She stares at gold rolls of hay while I stare at the best display. The woman captivated by Van Gogh, by Van Gogh girl. Roses, lilacs, daisies, almond blossoms, poppies, captured in beloved brushstroke arrays. Lost in oil paintings, bedrooms, churches, cafes. How you do, Mademoiselle Gachet? She stares at blue irises while I stare at brown irises. Boy, your bouquets can't quite portray her glow. She stares at gold rolls of hay while I stare at the best display. The woman captivated by Van Gogh, by Van Gogh What would you know? But there's my Van Gogh girl, lost in wonder.
Hiya! I'm Margo, and we are at Abbey Montmajour to recreate 2 of Levi's photographs. First, we have this photograph, which is a photo of a church a short distance from the Abbey. However, it's now on private property, so we weren't able to recreate this photo. Then, there's this photograph, which should be easy enough. Just gotta go up this staircase and... Oh. Yeah, so that one's not happening. Turns out in the 100 years since Levi took this photo, the staircase straight up disintegrated. So yeah, we weren't able to go to the terrace Levi was on to take the shot. This is the closest we could get to recreating the photo, which, while not bad, is definitely frustrating. However, there is hope! After we returned home, my mom and I were going through the unidentified photographs and noticed something interesting. This pattern. It's familiar. We'd seen it before, right? Well, sure enough, here it is. The angle might not be spot on, but considering we didn't even realize this photo was taken at the Abbey, it's not half bad. So, we did get a photo recreation here after all. Hiya! I'm Margo, and we are leaving the southern coast of France and making our way to Paris. On the way, we took a quick stop in Lyon, France to visit some family. While it's mostly just your typical French city, I did want to highlight this really cool mural we saw while walking around. The entire side of the building is one life-size mural of famous locals that made history. The mural spans 7 stories and even wraps around the sides of the building at parts. The level of detail and work put into this thing is just immensely impressive, and it deserved its own little highlight episode. Hiya! I'm Margo, and we're climbing the hills of Lyon to get into the Basilica of Notre-Dame des Fouveniers. It can be accessed by driving or by walking through this gorgeous hillside garden, where I had to take the opportunity to photograph my sisters. The view walking the path was beautiful, but nothing could top the inside of the basilica itself. Guys, it's my favorite thing in the world. Ornate ceilings! It's been a while since I've mentioned them, so boom! Bam! Baboosh! Ornate ceilings. They're the best. There are also these gorgeous mosaics on the wall. Yeah, those are mosaics, not paintings. I think the ceiling may also be mosaic, but it's hard to tell in person, and I can't find a source online that states whether it's painted or not. If you happen to know, please tell me in the comments. I'm really curious. Hiya, I'm Margo, and I happened to walk across something really strange. While leaving the Basilica in Lyon, we happened to pass an amphitheater that was getting ready for a concert later that night.
We sat in the stands since the area was open to the public at the time, and we were able to hear the artists practicing behind the curtain. Y'all, check this out. Hiya! I'm Margo, and we are officially heading to the last major stop on our trip through France. Paris. My eldest sister unfortunately had to fly home, so from this point on, it's just me, my middle sister, and my parents. We were walking through Paris, walking with our feet 10 feet off of the Pompidou Center, Paris' modern art museum. I'm not sure if anyone's gonna get my song reference, so I'm just gonna focus on the avant-garde water fountain. There was also this sculpture completely made out of plastic bottles, arrayed in a wave pattern as a commentary on pollution, which I think was really well done, and as you can tell by my camera work here, really captivated my imagination. Then we went into the Pompidou Center, which is famous for its escalator going up the side of the building, giving a spectacular view over the city skyline. You could see everything from Sacre Coeur to the Eiffel Tower from up here. Next, we went to meet up with one of my cousins to see probably my favorite religious structure over this entire trip. And that's really saying something. Hiya! I'm Margo, and I think I may have found something I like more than ornate ceilings. I know, how could anything take over my love of ornate ceilings? Well, look at this. Welcome to Sainte Chapelle, a royal chapel home to one of the largest collections of medieval stained glass in the world. Up close, these windows depict over 1,100 scenes from the Bible, and from a distance, they form an almost psychedelic pattern through just a cacophony of color. And yes, I know a cacophony only really applies to sound, but that's just how overwhelmingly beautiful this chapel truly is. If you see this building from the outside, you would have no idea that all of that beauty rested inside of those windows. It is truly a marvel of Gothic architecture, and it's no wonder that this place spoke to my great-grandfather Levi so much. Hiya! I'm Margo, and if the French are known for one thing, it's protests. Turns out my visit would be no different. We were in Paris during the French legislative election, and the results of the election led to President Emmanuel Macron dissolving the National Assembly. Now, that's a major oversimplification of what happened, but it's easy to say that the French were not exactly happy about this. Cue a series of protests around Paris, especially at the Monument to the Republic. Over the course of our stay, I took photos of the statue as it progressively got further and further defaced, eventually resulting in a protest march that occurred just a block from our Airbnb. I wanted to join, but my family wouldn't let me. I don't blame them, they were just trying to keep me safe, but man, would it have been cool for the story. Hiya, I'm Margo, and have you ever heard of Musée d'Orsay? This train station turned art museum is home to some of the most famous paintings in the world, especially when it comes to my favorite art movement, Impressionism. Not only is there an entire room dedicated to Van Gogh, but there are several other famous works from the artists that truly defined the movement, including Claude Monet and my personal favorite, Edouard Manet. Because this museum is made from an old train station, there are these really cool architectural quirks such as this clock face window or the open-air design for the main hall, which opens up some fun possibilities when you angle your photos just right. When we were visiting, there was an entire exhibit dedicated to the salon that began the Impressionist movement in 1874. The works that were featured at this radical salon were all recollected to be featured together once again, which is honestly an art lover's dream! This piece from the exhibit ended up being my mom's favorite, and it's clear to see why. However, there was one painting missing. Yup, one of the two real Van Gogh paintings we saw in the Van Gogh Museum back in Arles actually, quote-unquote, belongs to Musée d'Orsay. I couldn't help but laugh. Hiya! I'm Margo, and while I talked all about Musée d'Orsay yesterday, I wanted to dedicate an episode to my middle sister's favorite artist, Van Gogh. While the art is absolutely beautiful, I mean, I literally posted a song all about it a few days ago, I was struck by the thought of how uncomfortable it would be to be a painting. While standing in front of one of his works, I wrote this poem to Van Gogh's paintings. When your creator pressed his brush into his paints, no ear to tuck the brush away, instead he may create each one of you. Each of you now hung on walls and hallowed halls of hush and shush, and now no brush and now no hand shall touch the strands of your dear frame. Now we gawk, now we talk, without a drip of meaning, leaning listlessly in front of you, nothing to do but ogle you. Do you wish for dear reprieve? For you grieve your creator's hands, and now you hang. You'll never stand on your own feet, on your command. Now we ogle. Now we balk. Now we drip out drivel talk behind your back, in front of your face. Do you wish for better grace? Do you wish for freedom, love? To fly among the city's doves, but for today, Musée d'Orsay shall keep you caged for Euro's sake. Hiya, I'm Margo, and today we are in yet another art museum. Welcome to L'Orangerie, home to the famous lily pads of Claude Monet. Painted to celebrate the end of World War I, these gigantic canvases take up 2 oval rooms, and take up nearly every angle you can see, too. They are based on the gardens of Giverny, where Monet called home for the last 43 years of his life. It's impossible to get a photo of the whole canvas unless you use some camera tricks like a fisheye lens or a panorama, but having these pieces take up the entire lengths of room really makes you feel like you're in a wispy version of Giverny, where the only thing left in the world is peace. After a devastating war like no one had ever seen, it's no wonder that the French government would want to support an art exhibit like this. Hiya, I'm Margo, and welcome to the Gates of Hell! Just kidding. This is Musee Rodin, a museum dedicated to the works of famed sculpture artist Auguste Rodin. You likely know of his most famous work, The Thinker, but this museum includes a full collection of his best sculptures, including several that are located in the gardens around the museum. Inside you can find marble statues, bronze figures, and a photo of me my folks took when I wasn't looking. In the gardens, you'll find several of his other famous works, including The Three Shades, The Burghers of Calais, and, of course, The Gates of Hell. And that's not even mentioning the natural beauty this garden has to offer through its bountiful array of cultivated flower bushes. Unfortunately, at this point, my dad was feeling ill, so we took a quick stop back at our Airbnb before making our way to perhaps Paris's most famous art museum, the Louvre. Hiya, I'm Margo, and I swear I wasn't involved in the Louvre heist a couple months ago. Why do I insist that? Well, because when I visited the Louvre just a year earlier, I happened to photograph every single one of the crowns stolen. And only the ones that were stolen. That's still kind of insane to think about, not gonna lie. Obviously, that's not the only cool artworks to see within the Louvre. There's a lot of hype around the Mona Lisa and Liberty Leading the People, but there's other fantastic works here, including Arcamboldo's Winter, Spring, Summer, and Autumn collection, Winged Victory, Women of Algiers in Their Apartment, The Wedding at Cana, The Death of Marat, The Coronation of Napoleon, and so many more. You could spend days in the Louvre and still not see it all, but we were able to see a lot of the museum despite only being there for about 4 hours. Hiya, I'm Margo, and I may have fallen asleep in Sacre Coeur. My dad was feeling better, so we were able to go to the famous Basilica on the hill. We were here to recreate this Levi photo, which is taken from one of the sides of the Basilica as you walk around towards the entrance. However, after weeks of non-stop traveling, when my body was given a moment to rest, it took it. After that quick nap, we walked around Monmartre, including passing by the Moulin Rouge and the unofficial Chat Noir, since the original cabaret closed in 1897. Now we're off to recreate another photo of my great-grandfather's at another of Paris's most famous monuments. Hiya, I'm Margo, and we are officially at the Eiffel Tower. With that, we have recreated yet another iconic Levi photograph in the City of Love. Though, honestly, the thing I love most is playing around with how to frame the Eiffel Tower through photography. It was fun going under the trees, trying to angle my shot between the branches, or even using a crossing bar to take a funny-looking photo. This shot was probably my favorite, with the liberated fists breaking their chains in front of one of the world's greatest symbols for love. Unfortunately, that exhaustion I mentioned in yesterday's post was more than just me being tired. I ended up catching the same cold my dad had days prior. While I missed out on spending time with my family, here are some photos they took while walking around a botanical garden, including my favorite, daisies. Hiya! I'm Margo, and do you remember how a few episodes ago I mentioned my dad being sick with a cold and him having to take some time to rest? Well, I caught what he had and ended up spending our last day in Paris, in bed, with cold medicine, and nothing to do but write. While resting, I heard a couple having a very heated conversation in the stairway outside our Airbnb. While I couldn't understand what they were saying, it felt like the building was on fire and I was trapped listening to its flames. So, with nothing better to do, I wrote about it. To the fire outside my door. I hear you roaring. Hear your flames singe the hinges. Hear your heat. Two flaming hearts war in the stairwell over what? I cannot hear the words over screams. Roaring. Now would be a good time for a firefighter, but I'll settle for my smoke detector. Beep, beep, beeping at me. It needs batteries. I do too.